to do the right thing and to unanimously agree to repeal a provision that was included in the government funding legislation in November. You will recall that the funding bill included a provision that many senators were simply not made aware of. Came in at the last minute. It set up a special payday of $500,000 paid for by the taxpayers for a select group of 8 senators. Mr. President, that policy is simply wrong. And it goes against everything that we're supposed to be doing as elected representatives to make life better for the people who live in our states and in the country. We've all heard a lot of excuses trying to justify why a handful of senators deserves a big financial windfall. But let me remind you why they are wrong. This all began when President Trump and his political allies cooked up a scheme to try to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election, all so he could stay in power. You will remember that he lost the election, but instead of respecting our nation's nearly 250-year history of peaceful transfers of power, President Trump and his allies launched a pressure campaign to try and install slates of fake electors to overturn the election results in several key states. And while senators were here in this chamber pushing back on those false efforts, President Trump instigated a riot, urged his supporters to come here and try to stop Congress from carrying out our sworn democratic responsibilities. We just observed the 5th anniversary of that attack last week, where so many members came to the floor, I was here, came to the floor and shared their memories of the horror and violence of that day. Those actions led by President Trump and his allies were criminal, simply criminal. And those crimes were exactly what the Department of Justice was investigating when subpoenas were issued for certain phone call logs. These logs weren't being targeted for political reasons. They were part of a legitimate and serious investigation into criminal activity. The Justice Department followed standard legal practice in seeking those phone logs. This should be just common sense. But unfortunately, there are those who believe a select group of senators have the right to profit from being caught up in a legitimate criminal investigation. And they're okay with American taxpayers footing the bill. They've claimed that this provision was never meant to enrich senators, but the reality is there's nothing in the law to prevent that from actually happening. They've claimed that the special counsel and the judge overseeing this matter acted in bad faith. But in reality, there was no departure, absolutely no departure from established Department of Justice and judicial practice. Now, I'm not opposed to debating the merits of this matter and determining whether there needs to be forward-looking changes. In fact, I would support some of those forward-looking changes. But that's not what's happening right here. Instead, without any thoughtful consideration, this body approved a provision to retroactively rewrite the law and set up the opportunity for special financial payments to a select group of senators. When our House colleagues, they learned of this, they were as surprised as most all of us that were here in this chamber. Our House colleagues did the right thing. They quickly and unanimously, that's right, the House unanimously, that doesn't happen a whole lot, the House unanimously, 426-0, passed a bipartisan bill to repeal this provision because they knew it was wrong. We should be here working to lower costs for our constituents and not using taxpayer dollars irresponsibly. I hope my colleagues will join me in righting this wrong today. And so, Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to the immediate consideration of H.R. 6019, which was received from the House and is at the desk. Further, I ask unanimous consent that the bill be considered read a third time and passed, and the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table.
Is there objection?
Yes, I object.
Senator from South Carolina. Objection is
Reserving
heard.
the right to object. As a matter of fact, I've been here a while. I can't think of a time that I feel the need to object. You're entitled to your opinion of me. How do you get in this group of 8 people? Jack Smith went after my phone records. I'm the chairman of the Judiciary Committee. We find out later that this political motivated hit job against President Trump by Jack Smith got 8 of us, and there's probably more. What did I do to deserve this, Senator? I'll just tell you. I don't know where you were at January 6th. I was here. I was probably the leading voice on this side of the aisle to say the election is over. Biden won, Trump lost. But you keep talking about Trump, because if there's a case of Trump derangement syndrome, I think it's spread throughout the building. I didn't riot. I didn't give cover to the idea that the election was stolen. Quite the opposite. What was my big offense? Being a friend of Trump. Now, what are you trying to do here? Do the right thing? The right thing is to continue to investigate Jack Smith for turning the law upside down, for creating a precedent that should scare every senator in this body. The law is pretty clear. There's a statute on point that the Senate, even with a non-disclosure order, is supposed to notify the members when somebody wants our phone records. We're a separate branch of the government, and you don't seem to be upset at all because they're coming after Trump and a friend of Trump. Now, when we do something, you know, we're out to destroy Trump, and anytime we look at what y'all did, you know, we're, I guess, a bunch of crooks. Now, let's talk about me and enrichment. The Democratic majority Senate leader, Senator Schumer, signed off on this. So I want the world to know, and the world's paying no attention because it's blowing up right now, that this provision was coordinated between Senator Thune and Schumer, because a lot of people are worried if they can do it to Republicans, and maybe they'll do it to Democrats. So the idea that 8 of us cooked something up is ridiculous. We talked to your Democratic leadership. The fact that they didn't talk to you is your problem with them. Now, what happened? We sent to the Ethics Committee what we're doing, and they didn't send anything back. Now they have. So the bottom line is, Mr. President, this provision was a result of we're not going to take it anymore. The law was flagrantly violated, I believe, but he's already made a decision, Senator Peters says, that Jack Smith was lawfully in the right here. We'll have a hearing. He's already decided that Jack Smith was right to find my phone records. Based on what? Being a friend of Trump? I will take this to the court. And if your goal is to intimidate me, boy, you don't know anything about me. If your goal is to try to cover up a valid inquiry and stop Jack Smith from being looked at, it ain't happening. I am more determined than ever to find out how Arctic frost got so off the rails. Within 3 days of Trump announcing, I'm going to run again, the process started, and within 6 months, he had 91 felony charges in Manhattan, Atlanta, Georgia, and Washington, D.C., and Florida. I had to spend $1.2 million to go down to Georgia for the Fani Willis debacle. So this will be looked at. Was there a coordinated effort between Jack Smith, the special counsel, and the most liberal jurisdictions in the country to knock Trump out of the race by throwing everything you could at him, whether it made sense or not, and his friends? See, I don't know, but we're going to find this out, Senator Peters. We're moving forward. You have made up your mind. If it were up to you, we would not be looking at Jack Smith. You made a mistake there by defending somebody where you have no idea actually what they did. So I think I pretty well know where you're coming from. So I object. I object because we did it in coordination with Democrats. I object because we let the Ethics Committee know. The House did it quickly. There's provisions in this bill from the House that his amendment would strip out. A notification requirement. Every member should want to be notified if anybody in the government, executive branch, is looking at your phone records. This provision would strip that out. A private cause of action would strip it out. I live in America. We all live in America. If you cannot hold your government accountable for violating your rights or potentially violating your rights, you have a very dangerous government. I am no better than anybody else, but I'm certainly hell's no worse than anybody else. So I want to know why the government issued a subpoena saying, made a subpoena request that if you tell me about what's going on here, that I'm likely to taint the witnesses and act irresponsible. What have I ever done as a senator to make you think that's me? There was no factual foundation that I would do anything illegal if you told me. I did nothing illegal except be Trump's friend, apparently. I inquired as to whether or not I should vote to certify the election on January 6th, and I did. I did not know this happened, but if it can happen to me, my colleagues over there, it can happen to you. So this unanimous consent request would strip the notification out. It would strip the private cause of action out. I think that's the wrong signal to send to a government out of control. The private cause of action. The $500,000 is trying to deter people from doing this again. The bottom line is the private cause of action needs to stay so that if anybody else in the future gets hurt like this, a private citizen, there are a bunch of groups out there, Mr. President, all conservative, who had their phone records looked at too. And we're not going to give up, no matter what Senator Peters says. We're going to look at it. Turning Point USA, there's a lot of shenanigans going on out there with Jack Smith, and we're going to look at it, whether you want us to or not. And I hope they can sue. But as to me, I'm a senator. If this provision, the private cause of action, is seen out of line with what the Senate rules now, I will gladly fix that. And you're off base if you think I'm doing this for $1 million. I'm going to sue for much more than that, not just to try to make my life whole, to make people pay for trying to forget my phone records, for God's sakes. That will be in court. I'll have to prove that. So I'll make sure, and I'll have it just in a minute, a provision to change the law so that there's no doubt that I and the 8 others, we won't get a benefit from the $500,000. It won't be personal, but we do want to proceed with our case. And I want other people to proceed with their case. So if we do this right now, Turning Point USA, a bunch of other groups would not have a private cause of action. I want to preserve that private cause of action for a lot of other people who are not senators. As to me, I don't know what you're implying that I did something to benefit me in the dark of night. Yeah, I remember that, but life goes on. So I object. I object to what you're doing. I object to the fact that you think Jack Smith was legal when you have no idea what he did. I object.
The objection is heard. Senator from South Carolina.
Where's my amendment at? Okay. Therefore, I ask unanimous consent that the consent be modified to include adoption of my substitute amendment, which is at the desk.
Is there objection to the modification?
Mr. President, reserving the right to object.
Senator from Michigan.
Reserving the right to object, but I want to say that I greatly appreciate Senator Graham's proposal that he has just put forward just now. We have received this last night. But I think it gets to the most critical issue here, which is the retroactive rewarding or awarding of $500,000 per violation of damages to a handful of senators. I think that I very much appreciate Senator Graham for doing that. But I don't believe that it gets to the full bipartisan, bicameral solution that we need. And Senator Graham, I'm sympathetic to the arguments you made here. I can rebut some of them, but I don't want to get into that debate right now, back and forth to do it. But I understand where you're coming from on a lot of those issues. But I think there are other concerns in this statute that was enacted in November that need to be addressed, including some potential for abuse for the target of a criminal investigation provision that's in the statute that remains retroactive. That could create a lot of problems for senators here on the floor, to Senator Graham's point. Certainly dealing with the damages provision, as my colleague proposes in this proposal that he put forward just now, is a significant part of the solution, but it's not the whole solution. So Senator Graham, I just hope that this could be a very positive starting point. Thank you for making this offer here today. I would ask that we could get together, try to find some common ground here to make sure that some of the concerns that you have are addressed, because I think those are reasonable. The part that you're pulling out, which I think is unreasonable, and I appreciate you now agree that that too is unreasonable. But let's have an honest, frank discussion about the rest, because certainly the points you raise are ones that I want to have the opportunity to talk about, and I understand where you're coming from, and I think we can find a solution that will work for this body and for the American people. With that, I object.
Mr. President.
Objection, sir. Senators are reminded they're to address each other through the chair.
Okay, sorry about that.
Senator of South Carolina.
Yeah. So, objections heard. Here's what the Ethics Committee said about my proposal, my modification, and that the amendment cures the Senate 37.4 issue previously identified in letter sent to you. So I asked the Ethics Committee, will this amendment cure any concerns that people have about this provision regarding me or any other senator? It does. So if that's what you want to do, I think we fixed it. However, with all due respect to my colleague, I'm never going to agree to drop the notification requirement. I've had a ton of House members say, please don't do that. All of us here should want to be notified if some executive branch is looking at our phone records. So that would be terrible. The private cause of action goes away. I'm never going to agree to drop that. Why? There are a bunch of people caught up in Jack Smith that are not senators, that may have a cause of action, and they deserve their day in court. As to my cause of action under the statute, I'm going to pursue it, but in a way that's compliant with the Senate rules. And I just want to put everybody on notice. This statute is just one avenue to find out what happened. There'll be other. I'll go to the phone company. I'll sue Jack Smith's, Biden's DOJ. That's where I'm headed. But I'll do it in a fashion consistent with the rules of the Senate. But I'm not going to drop the private right of action, because there are a bunch of people out there other than me. I think the notification requirement, given the environment in which we're all living in, whether you're Republican or Democrat, I think we need to be notified if the executive branch is maybe doing something they shouldn't do. So I look forward to working with you. I appreciate we end this thing the way we've ended it. And I will be pursuing my legal rights consistent with the ethics of the Senate. And maybe we can work something out. But Senator Peters, we live in pretty dangerous times now, and I can see it going bad on our side, your side. We need to protect these institutions the best we can from things that may come our way. It's me today, it could be y'all tomorrow, and I love the institution. People want to change the rules, to make it the House. I don't. So thank you very much. I yield.
Mr. President.
Senator Michigan.
Mr. President, just a response for Senator Graham. I appreciate that offer and the notification requirement that you bring up. I believe in that. I think it's absolutely critical that we have that for the reasons that you cite. There are some problems in the provision that we think there's some glaring exceptions to that would allow folks to say, no, we're not going to notify you. That's unacceptable. We should make sure that that notification requirement applies without the abuse of the administration, regardless of who's there, on what side, because you're right. Ultimately, our job is to protect this institution as a co-equal branch of government. You and I share that sincere belief, and I think these are just some technical aspects that we can work out, and I look forward to that opportunity.
We'll start it here soon. Thank you.